the bans come through. Just make sure, and no surprises there. Jackpot eliminated.
Seems thematic that the crones are also in that list with the crone mama, and it also makes sense why they're both relics. Wangid, you know what? I'm just done predicting what they do. He's got Nilfgaard on blue, and BigKukuRUzina Nilfgaard on red. We've got a Nilfgaard mirror, one of potentially the highest skill ceiling matches in the current meta.
Absolutely. Wangid just loves throwing out those curveballs. We touched on maybe the best opportunity for Iluxa to win with his Koshchi was red coin with Koshchi, Wangid's Nilfgaard on blue. Wangid almost double bluffing and saying, Big Kuku, you're not going to bring your Koshchi. You don't think I'm ever going to queue Nilfgaard on blue? Well, guess what? Surprise, here it is. And Big Kuku will be gutted he did not bring his own Koshchi. If Wangid wins this, I would heavily favour him moving forward into the series, but the Cantarella in the hand of BigKukuRUzina, that is a great card to have in a mirror matchup.
Yeah, Wangid's playing 5D chess with this queue, and I absolutely love it. Because the thinking that I guess we had was Wangid's going to go Northern Realms. Big Kuku doesn't want to open monsters into Northern Realms because that's not great. So maybe you go Nilfgaard, which potentially is your best chance against Northern Realms. Wangid thinks maybe I want the mirror and has gone for this strategy here. The Cantarella, though, it blocks the invocation, right? So Wangid's going to need to find his time. And actually, looking at the hand, I think Wangid's hand is way too stacked for round one.
Yeah, he's lacking that proactivity. And Nilfgaard mirrors, Jag, can be quite interesting. Round 3, board space can become a real issue if it's a long round, and you'll see people using their usurpers on your opponent's side of the board. Also, I've seen some players try round 2 bleeds with Masquerade Ball, where if they win round 1, they try and bleed with first say Masquerade Ball. I've seen it pay off, so I've seen it backfire. It's a very difficult mirror to maneuver. It looks a little bit awkward and funky, and the decisions are just so big brain, it hurts for me. I have no skill in this particular mirror, and I'm excited to see these two maneuver their way throughout it.
One advantage that Big Kuku has at the moment in terms of this round 1 hand is that Dead Man's Tongue. It allows him to see what's in his deck in the order that it is and banish 2 cards. It allows you to manipulate your deck and really try and find those draws so that if we do go into a long round 3, you know what's coming and you can kind of try and find the best cards that you can with the tools that you can. You can't change the order, but you can see the order, and you can then banish maybe core bronze cards that are blocking you from drawing your high quality gold cards.
Yeah, we saw a Mage Assassin from Wangid enter the board and hit the armor of the Hunter. So 1 point lost there for Wangid. Of course, Jagras, we are going to be paying attention to those rubber duckies in the premium artwork of Mage Assassin, a nice little Easter egg. We pointed it out quite a lot yesterday, but in case you weren't watching and weren't aware, keep your eyes on the bathtub in the Mage Assassin.
They're quite common. I've just seen one on each. So, if you miss them, I don't know what you're doing. Maybe you're blind. Who knows? This looks like Dead Man's Tongue, and you've got your coup de grace, you've got access to your Masquerade Bowl, but then it's a while before you get a stack of bronzes. So I feel like you maybe have to banish those bronzes at the top, stack of golds, just to try and find some space.
Yeah, and we have seen just yesterday Wangid having his Usurper second bottom card with his Dead Man's Tongue in round 1, but was able to thin enough by mulliganing the Bronze Spies as well to guarantee Joachim into Usurper in round 3. So even though there's some golds near the bottom for Big Kuku there are options, and Wangid happy to take that pass on 7, doesn't want to lose on even, has not used his Dead Man's Tongue as he doesn't have access to it, and this is a benefit of keeping that greedy gold hand in round 1, Jag, because he just managed to get out with his Blightmaker, with that extra 5 points from the stratagem. That proved all important here.
Yeah, I think he was lucky to get out. Big Kuku obviously just going by the strategy of you play Blightmaker, you play Dead Man's Tongue, it's a very sequenced round 1 for Nilfgaard, and the Genie, allowing Wangid to get out of this round, because I did say his hand is too good for round 1. And sometimes you get into this position where you're almost forced to keep playing golds, but because he had that pass at 7 with point advantage, it meant that he's not risking, losing on even, and he can go into round 2 and carry over all of those cards.
Big Kuku's put a mage on top. It's going to be Brathan's, a nice other use of the Blightmaker there. We put a mage on top, spawning the Guardian. So still having that Mage Assassin left in his deck, but of course does also have a Blightmaker available. That was found from an informant. Wang ID finds the Dead Man's Tongue. That's a great card to have.
Look at that hand. Look at that hand. Wang ID, he's got a dry pass card, right? If it goes to that, I don't think it will. I feel like Kuku may try and play a couple cards out so that he can draw into better cards. He knows what he's drawing into, right? So he may go down that route. He's got the Fangs, but then on the flip side, if you're Kuku and you do want to play into this round, but you want to play bad cards, what do you even play? Because there's no targets, right? And this is the proactivity that Nilfgaard sometimes struggles with. He can't. I mean, well, he can because he can go down to 7 cards. He can play like a dry Fangs. It's not great, but it just shows Wang ID that you're trying to get rid of cards. And at that point, Wang ID, he knows you're trying to get rid of cards, so he's really not going to commit anything.
Yeah, BigKuku also, just worth mentioning, when he used his Dead Man's Tongue, the Brothans was towards the bottom. So that Blight Maker putting the Brothans on top, really showing the power. And this is a big moment because we might be seeing an Alchemist come down. And it is a proactive Alchemist. There's a Hunter to give to Wang ID. But what will BigKuku get in return?
He will get, let's wait and see. Oh, a Nausicaa Sergeant. Substandard. I mean, BigKuku, with that card, he knows what he's drawing into, right? So he knows that card is there. He saw the order with Dead Man's Tongue, so has that option to take the risk. And I wouldn't say it paid off. You gave them an Aristocrat and you took a Sergeant. I would say maybe the Aristocrat's slightly more valuable.
I have to say, I really love the way Wang ID has played this mirror matching, passing on 7 and putting all the stress, the decision making on BigKukuRUzina. Again, I've seen players take the line of playing Masquerade Ball into this round 2. BigKuku doesn't have that option. He doesn't have the aristocrats necessary to do it. And now it just basically means that BigKuku might just be forced to go to the long round, and Wang ID seems confident in his ability to maneuver this round 3, which is all about board space if we do go there. Also, the location, Jag, played by BigKuku is going to carry over to round 3, and that is a real board space issue, taking up a slot for BigKuku.
He clicked the location and put the wee golem, who dreams of magic sheep or something, on the top of Wang ID's list. So decided that rather than playing the Cantarella in the way that you traditionally do, synergizing it with the location, instead what he would rather do is try and brick Wang ID's draws. That's a spicy decision right there.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I have to say, Jag, the more I think about this location play from BigKuku, it seems like a misplay. His hand just doesn't look functional. He's played the coup, suggesting that he's not going to be pushing any further. And the carryover from the location, the resilience, is a massive detriment. It's just taking up one of the 18 precious slots available on his side of the board. And as I said, board space is all important in this one. The good thing for him, though, is the Joachim, the Cantarella, means he can play multiple extra spies compared to Wang ID if he can replay that Joachim from his graveyard. Oh, but he's already clicked the location as well now, so that's not even a possibility.
I think he banished the Golem for 0 points, but just fixing your draw. So that was Dead Man's Tongue from Wang ID looking at the order, and there was a lot of bronze in there. He's going to draw into the Blightmaker, and that'll allow him to thin the Mage, which was a little bit further down. But I guess realizing that from that play, BigKuku's not going to push. I can afford to play this Dead Man's Tongue in a low tempo way and remove the Golem, remove the click that BigKuku played. And he's kind of shot himself in the foot a little bit with that play. Oh, nope, there's the Golem. I tell a lie. I thought he banished it. Oh, it's a gold card. I thought it was a bronze. Jagger,
Yeah.
you're a silly goose.
Despite being 0 provisions, it is a gold. Do you know, it would have been quite the amazing play from Wang ID, but unfortunately, well, he could have done it, but it would have been the only card he would have banished, and it wouldn't have got 0 points. So if you want to banish a gold with Dead Man's Tongue, you just banish the 1. So it would have been a 0 tempo play. It would have been a very interesting line for Wang ID to have taken, though, for sure. But I have to say, look at the board state. Okay, this location is not what you want if you're BigKuku. It's just taking up a spot. It's doing absolutely nothing for you. So the battle of the brains for me has so far gone to Wang ID, but let's see how these players maneuver their way through this round 3 of board space.
Yeah, look at the hands, though. Like, both players have heavy golden hands. Oh, man, I'm so gutted about that Golem. One thing it does do also is it blocks Roderick, although Wang ID, no Roderick in hand, so doesn't have that concern. And Wang ID just opening with a Masquerade Ball. It's a nice proactive play, gets an engine onto the board, and BigKuku, often you react similarly. You know, you play a Masquerade Ball. They play a Masquerade Ball. It depends what he wants to do about this Thirsty Dame, though, because this Thirsty Dame is going to grow, but there's lots of different ways you can deal with it. You can kind of poison it. You can add a status to it and Vincent it. There's lots of different things you can do.
Just looking at body language, Jag, I think you can tell who is feeling more confident about the way this game is panning out. Wangid, cool, calm, collected. BigKuku, while, okay, he's very experienced. He's not been in many opens before, and it doesn't look like he's completely happy with how this game has panned out. It's such a difficult mirror to play, and here comes the first Fangs as an opener for BigKuku.
I'm genuinely impressed that you can tell how Wangid is feeling. The man is stoic. The man does not react. He is the king of poker face. So honestly, I have no idea what he's feeling. He could be stressed as hell, and I feel like you wouldn't know. But BigKuku, definitely a player that is more visual in their reactions, which I think is fun from a spectator perspective. You know, for us, it gives us a bit of insight into what they're thinking. And yeah, this is hard. I guess what BigKuku's doing there is he doesn't want to put a poison target on the board. So by playing the Fangs like this, you don't want to poison a Fangs. That's trash. So now it kind of puts Wangid, you know, he can't continue to play Aristocrats, but he can just play a Blightmaker.
Yeah, and absolutely. And one thing that is worth bearing in mind is this Blightmaker, while it's a lot of points, it's taking up 3 spots on the side for Wangid, and one of those slots is just 2 points. So not ideal. What you also might see happen in this matchup, as mentioned before, you can put the Usurper down and just leave it on your opponent's side of the board. Added to that, you can also... do you know, my mind's gone blank. I can't remember what I was going to say. I had something to say, and I'm sure it will come back to me, Jag. I hope it comes back to me.
I wonder if
it has come back to me as well.
Okay, go on. Continue.
I was going to suggest that BigKuku could use his poisons to not kill and follow up a kill, but he's done exactly that, as just as I was about to say it. So sometimes you might see players using poisons and not finishing a poison to restrict row space, but BigKuku deciding actually he wants the kill on the Thirsty Dame. It is going to get to an awful lot of points throughout this long round 3.
He's also just not giving Wangid targets, right? This is the other thing. By playing it like that, playing the follow-up poison, I mean, I guess the Van Wallenhelm Cupbearer does have Assimilate, so it is more of a target than the Fangs, but on the flip side, you know that a Thirsty Dame is coming, you probably want to deal with that. And I guess Wangid, yeah, opting to say the Cupbearer is an okay target, we'll go with that, but we will leave the bros, you know, we will leave the operatives to clog your board. Oh, changed his mind.
Wangid has got a different game plan altogether. Usually, in days gone by with this mirror, it's all about board space. That Usurper is not clicked, but he's got a different plan altogether, and I'm so excited to see what is up his sleeve. BigKuku under pressure. All eyes on BigKuku. Wangid just coming out with the plays that I would not have expected at all, and this is why he's one of the best in the world. Look how confident he is in maneuvering his way through this matchup.
I'm so confused because the thing is, an operative is an operative, right? So the Usurper, if BigKuku plays his Usurper, I believe he then steals all the operatives back. And then again, maybe he's making it so BigKuku can't click his operative, but in doing that, he's just blocking a lot of his board space. And that's not ideal.
Yeah, with the Fergus can add reapply that spying to these operatives, and that is a really good point. But unfortunately for BigKuku, no Fergus in his deck, so these operatives are going to be safe and sound on the side of Wangid, and there finally is the Thirsty Dame, the Masquerade Ball hitting the board.
This matchup stresses me out so much.
Me too.
Cantarella can pull that golem potentially, right? Like, if BigKuku doesn't know what's on the top of Wangid's list, and we assume Wangid plays Invocation last, and you just roll the Cantarella, yes, there's good targets, but there's also a Golem in there. Like, could he mess himself up with that Golem?
Yeah, it certainly could be, because he doesn't know exactly where it is, that is for sure. He mulliganed it away, he's going to be hoping it's towards the bottom. Joachim just going to be pulling one of 7 cards. So the best option for Joachim, or the best find, it's going to be either Vigo, it's going to be the Guardian, it's going to be a Hunter, or a Seditious Aristocrat. And on the side of BigKukuRUzina, he has not found his Usurper. There's also a Blightmaker, a Sergeant, a Fangs, and a Thirsty Dame available.
Is Vigo even going to be good, though? I don't feel like he's going to have the space for Vigo. You know, if you look at the back row, there's 2 spaces on the back row. There's 5 spaces on the front row. I'm not sure.
Big Kuku locking the Thirsty Dame slightly later than he would have liked, because this Dame did grow up to 6 points, whereas Wangid got that lockdown on Big Kuku's Dame when it was just at 4. So a couple of points extra on the Thirsty Dame for Wangid. Here is the first Joachim for Big Kuku, and it finds a Fangs, poisoning the Brathens. Of course, 2 chapters still remaining on the Masquerade Ball, also a Vincent as well, which can make use of this poison.
And look at the point difference, 47 points to 16. 6 cards apiece, but Big Kuku has so much more space than Wangid.
Yeah, but Wangid just seems to not care about board space. He's playing this matchup very differently to how I've seen it a few seasons ago. Admittedly, Jag, I've not watched this matchup much with the new Blightmaker and cards like that, but I'm very surprised to see the lines Wangid is taken, but it is absolutely fascinating to watch it all unfold. And while Big Kuku is down on points massively, he does have 2 chapters remaining from his Masquerade Ball, and as you say, he has a lot more space on his side of the ball. Usurper is as well still a card available for Big Kuku. It is guaranteed off of his Roderick, and of course he does need to play that soon if he wants to get maximum value off those operatives. If the back row's full, those operatives are not going to be able to spawn, and here comes the Usurper. Will Big Kuku decide he wants to leave those operatives on the side of Wangid's board?
If he clicks, I'm going to be so confused. Like, I genuinely will be so confused. Because there's just no space. You know, that's the back row full. And you can see here the decision as well with the poison. Rather than following up the poison on the Brathens and making space, Big Kuku poisoning the Cupbearer instead. One thing I do want to point out that I think is quite interesting there was Wangid opting to purify the Thirsty Dame. And it kind of forced Big Kuku into an awkward position, right? Big Kuku had 2 poisons left, so he can follow up poison on the Brathens if he wanted, but he can't double poison the Thirsty Dame. If he kills the Thirsty Dame, he's making space for Wangid, which is kind of helping him. So he forced Big Kuku into an awkward decision. You remove the Thirsty Dame by locking it because it'll do 3 damage. Or you leave it, and then it grows and provides more points for Wangid. And Wangid, he has the Fergus, right? So he can provide a little bit more value to that Thirsty Dame before it's in a good position for Big Kuku to lock it without killing it.
And this Cantarella for Big Kuku, if he wants to play it, now may be one of his last opportunities. Of course, what he could also do is he could use a leader charge to free up space. You could use an imprisonment on one of these 3 strength operatives and then play Cantarella at a time a little bit later on, maybe after Wangid is forced to invo one of your golds. Although invo on this Fangs is always going to be a nice option, so something to look out for. There's only 1 space left available for Wangid. This is where board space becomes an issue, but he is still 43 points ahead.
Yeah, and I think Wangid believes that Big Kuku is going to make him some space, right? That's the belief. You believe that, yes, I'm blocked now, but he's going to have cards like Vincent. You know, he's going to have cards like Coup de Grace. He's going to need to make space for those cards. He's got Invocation. Therefore, I can afford to do this. Wangid, he can only play... Well, he can play Coup de Grace for 3 damage. He can only really play Invocation at this point. The good news for Wangid is there's a 12-point Fangs. You're not putting anything super great for Cantarella on the top of your list. And there's no space to play Cantarella anyway. But on the flip side, you then know what you're pulling with Joachim. But he doesn't have a choice, right? He has to play the Invocation now. Unless you start discarding cards.
Yeah, there's no emissaries either, Jag. Emissaries can be so important in this mirror matchup, particularly with your coup de grace, because you're getting points with your coup without putting more space on the board. And there is a discard from Wangid, locking the Brathens, setting up that coup for a little bit later on, that payable special. And if board space does become available for Wangid, he is going to be looking to create, I would imagine, an emissary with that Brathens. However, for Big Kuku, if he follows up any of those poisons, if he completes any poisons, if he kills anything with Vincent or still something with Invo that is going to create enough space for Wangid to slam his Joachim. So he needs to be very careful here because he needs points, but he doesn't want to give Wangid value. He's already had to discard one card. He's going to want to maximize even more points as he's taken this this row space line. And there we see the leader charge come in on the operative, I believe, or maybe it was the Guardian, the 3-strength card either way. And now here comes a coup de grace onto a Joachim. And what will Joachim find for BigKukuRUzina? Oh,
A
big
Blight
find.
Maker. That is solid points, especially with the Mage Assassin available to be thinned. On top of that, you're getting big value. And BigKuku, he's trying to close this gap without oh, that was lucky.
Yeah,
he's trying to close this gap without giving Wangid space. And that 2 damage, there's a 1-point Joachim. There's a 2-point Mage Assassin. There's a 2-point Roderick. There is loads of targets that could potentially have given Wangid space in that play, and they haven't. And he's starting to close that gap without giving him space. And now, again, Wangid in a little bit of a pickle with what he does. This is such a high skill matchup, and I hope now you guys at home can see why. Because it's like a cat and mouse game. Wangid, he's filled his board, he clicked his usurper, but he's got that many points ahead, right? He dealt with Kuku's usurper, so Kuku can't get those points back. And now Kuku is trying to close that gap without giving Wangid space to get more points. And I'm not sure he can actually do it.
Yeah, and there is a problem for BigKuku in the fact that this Cantarella is not playable because Wangid's board is full. The Invo is going to free up space, allowing Wangid to get value from the Joachim, and the Vincent is going to be killing one of these cards that has a status and also following up that final poison. So I would not be surprised for BigKuku to discard his Cantarella. However, will that leave him with enough points if he does that?
Nope. He can't make it up, right? This is masterful from Wangid. Honestly, like, we thought clicking the usurper a weird choice, but he has intentionally clogged himself, right? He's away to the Netherlands at this point. He is full on clogging himself, happy to just discard cards. He's got a 30-point advantage, and there's no nice way for BigKuku to close that gap without giving Wangid space to just take the Barathans, replay the Barathans, play the Emissary, and increase the gap. It's just too big. And there's absolutely nothing that BigKuku can do at this point.
And Wangid's last card, Coup de Grace, isn't exactly going to be... Well, in fact, it will be brilliant because the Barathans can play an Emissary. You only need one spot on your board to play the Emissary. So BigKuku, again, forced and forked. If I use my Invo, if I use my Vincent, I let my opponent coup my Barathans. I think BigKuku's going to have a very good read that coup is the last card here due to that leader charge we saw on the Barathans. But if I don't do anything, I don't have enough points. And Wangid taking the lines of a Gwent magician.
There's nothing he can do.
Here does come the Vincent.
I guess this is big.
And it's still Wangid ahead by 3 points with 1 card remaining. Coup de Grace versus Invocation. However, Wangid, having previously used a leader charge on Barathans, he's chilling in at 2 points. Barathans, a fantastic card. I think we can see where this one is going to end up, Jag. And Wangid just playing this Nilfgaard mirror to perfection, finding the surprising lines we didn't see coming, and BigKuku caught off guard, and Wangid showing why he is regarded as one of the best players in the game.
And I think he's just deciding there whether you go for the Emissary or if there's a good Duchess target, right? Because of that follow-up poison, it's actually created 2 spaces for Barathans, so you don't have to go in on Emissary. You can go for the poison instead. The poison adding a tag. You're triggering those assimilates. You're, I guess, hydrating the thirsty dame, should we say. 59 points to 40. Invocation nowhere near enough. And Wangid...
Here we have it. It is going to be Reckless Flurry for Wangid going second. BigKuku on the blue coin, going first with his Imprisonment Nilfgaard. Second time of asking, can he get it through?
Yeah, so basically taking a play out of Wangid's book with this blue coin Nilfgaard, favoring its odds against the Skellige Red. Skellige Red, generally a little bit more predictable. And how do you feel about the hands? BigKuku's looking a little bit heavy on the gold side.
I have to say, Jack, just one thing that's caught my eye is this tactical decision. Often the stratagems get overlooked when we look at these deck lists, but often Magic Lamp, usually the preferred option, because it just gives you that little bit of extra proactivity. We saw yesterday Attorney Joust be used onto a Magic Lamp. You can use Emissary on it, but look at this hand for Big Kuku. Very limited options. You cannot use your Dead Man's Tongue on a tactical decision. That is just not possible. So I'm very curious as to why he's chosen the tactical decision over a Magic Lamp in this situation.
Yeah, I don't think it was a tactical decision to put the tactical advantage in the list here because, like you said, this is a situation where it's garbage. This is garbage because his hand for round 1 is horrific. If you're a Nilfgaard player, look, Joachim open. Oh, look at that roll! I was gonna say this hand is horrific. You don't have Nausicaas, you don't have Blightmakers, but you know what? Just high roll your Joachim. It's fine. You've got Cantarella, you've got Gothic Vade, you can play it again later. What a play.
A wry smile emerged from Wangid when he saw that Joachim hit the board. Pretty much the perfect find. Couldn't ask for much more. You're thinning your deck by an extra card, an extra 4 provision card, and of course it could have hit that Mage Assassin itself, which would have been significantly less points. Who needs Magic Lamp when you can just YOLO that Joachim into a Blightmaker?
Yeah, YOLO-Akim, right? That's a YOLO-Akim right there. And Spessy, what's missing from Wangid's hand?
He doesn't have the portal, but he does have a sad-looking singular fish flapper. Not ideal.
This is the first time you've said fish flapper in this broadcast today. I've been waiting. I'm going to be like, how long does it take Specimen to say the word fish flapper? You done well. You made it through the entire start of the game. The first set, admittedly no Skellige, to get to this point. And talking about sad hands, this is where the situation we have to keep going. However, now you can play the Dead Man's Tongue. And that's not bad. You know, you're drawing into Masquerade Ball. You'll get the Blightmaker. There is a mage, but you're going to thin it. It's okay, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Invo is quite near the bottom for Big Kuku, and Invo being a spell card, you don't have that luxury of being able to Joachim into it. So what Big Kuku might be looking to do is just reserve his Roderick to guarantee finding that Invo. Because that could be a nice card for him. Admittedly, Invocation, not exactly fantastic in this matchup. You can use it maybe to put a Junod on top of your deck and then Joachim into it or something like that. And here comes the Quartermaster from Wangid. We see the synergy between the Quartermaster and Maddock there. Pinging the Maddock, and then you're going to click it. It's going to come back later on with a Father Bomb or a D-Bomb. However, there was also the option for Wangid to kill the Joachim there and deny the coup de grace, but deciding he does not want to do that.
You deny the coup de grace, but then it allows your opponent to, you know, play the Gothic Vade. Can't even say it. The location, but actually went for the coup. Oh yeah, he knew he got the Blightmaker, right? Because of Dead Man's Tongue. He knew he was YOLO-Akim. It's not really a YOLO-Akim when you know. He knew he was YOLO-Akiming once again into a Blightmaker. This is just a BM round 1, 40 points to 10.
Yeah, the tempo here is absolutely ludicrous. You couldn't really ask for a better round 1 as a Nilfgaard player. You go for a Joachim into a Blightmaker, you Dead Man's Tongue, and then by banishing certain cards and looking at the order of your deck, you guarantee this coup into a second Blightmaker. Absolutely ludicrous from Big Kuku's Nilfgaard deck, and he's still 22 points up. This is the tempo pass of dreams, Jag. Fully expect this pass button to be hit rapidly because it's going to almost guarantee a long round 3.
I feel like Big Kuku there was unlucky and then incredibly lucky, right? Unlucky in the draws, but then incredibly lucky in the deck order, because being able to Joachim both Blightmakers. You know, we talk about Blightmaker being like an 11-point play. No, not if you Joachim it. Then it is even more. And because of the Cantarella and the Gothic Vade, Big Kuku's able to commit that Joachim in this round and not lose it for a future round. And that's just insane. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, this strategy that Big Kuku's employed here, known as the tempo pass, is a great thing to try and add to your game. If you're playing a deck that has a fantastic long round 3 and you want first say, tempo passes in a Nilfgaard deck in this situation work because Wangid can't do this in one card, which really just means that he cannot bleed into round 2, so it's going to guarantee a round 3 that's long. You also might see players using Siege, Pincer Maneuver do this with Foltest, and yeah, Wangid's just having to play all his cards to catch up here because of the sheer points from the Blightmakers and Joachim.
what a horrific megascope. You know, we talk about megascope, there's always targets. You can always have an omega scope, right? Because there's always a good target, except in this very niche scenario where you're omega scoping a quartermaster. It's not what you want to see, right? You guess you have the Matic that you can cycle it, so it's okay. But, ugh, that was a lot of cards. So, Nilfgaard long round. Good luck with that, Wangid.
Yeah, just really for Big Kuku, you couldn't ask for a better start to round one. You use your 2 bronze cards in the Blight Makers, you use your Dead Man's Tongue, the 3 new Nilfgaard cards that of course are so popular in the Masquerade Ball deck, showing exactly why they have taken Nilfgaard to being one of the top decks in the meta. And Wangid doesn't really have much to do here. He's just going to mulligan, try and get the best hand possible, and strap in for a long round 3 against Masquerade Ball, which is not fun for many decks.
It's not fun. Not fun for many decks. I feel like the only deck it's fun for, and even then not fun because it hurts your brain, is Nilfgaard. Because then you get in a mirror, so you know your long round is as good as their long round, more or less.
Maybe
like,
those Angle M decks as well, right?
I guess it's fun for Angle M decks. If you're a Kayla, it's great fun. You can Angle M a Gothic Vade and still win. And
here we go.
Yeah, here's the dry pass. Here's the location. You've got that carryover. And is this insult to injury?
It could be. It could be, Jag. What's it gonna find? Oh my goodness, it's a fish flapper. Devastating for Wangid. Well, you might see, okay, Big Kuku doesn't want a fish flapper. Well, first of all, yes, he does. It's a great card with a brilliant premium art. But more importantly, suddenly Wangid's Portal, he's not playing Portal Fish Flappers, Jaggerus. He's playing Portal
Fish Flapper.
Yeah.
Oh, disastrous. And I feel like that's the most reaction I've seen out of Wangid in a long time. That kind of head thrown back in disgust at Nilfgaard. And this is why people hate Nilfgaard, right? This is what makes people so mad when it comes to Nilfgaard. I'm surprised Wangid still has hair at this point with how mold he must be on the inside.
Yeah, you've got to feel for him. Big Kuku, it's all gone to plan in this one. You couldn't really have asked for much more. And looking at the hand for Wangid, I can tell you, in his deck, there is a Geralt Quen, there is a Portal, and there is a Kadooch as well. So missing Quen, you imagine this Portal's just going to stay in the deck and he's going to take the Kadooch instead. But not only have things gone so well for Big Kuku in terms of draws, then that Alchemist, but Wangid missing the Quen, which is arguably the most important card in this deck.
The Portal, it does have a consolation prize. You're playing Portal Fish Flapper, but you're also playing Portal Nausicaa Sergeant.
Oh, that's a very good point.
Little consolation prize there. I don't think it's quite what you want to do, but it's not maybe as disastrous as it seems. But then look at this hand for Wangid. You've not played your Portal in round 1. You've not thinned your Fish Flapper at this point. And that's just lots of bombs. You know, he might have the Fowler bomb, but that hand is so bronze. And when you look at the state of Big Corn's hand, what are you even going to do? Hey, look, Joachim's coming back. We missed him. Come back, Joachim. Go on. Let's play him again. And he can, right? Because he knows the order of his deck. So he should, unless the mulligan has done something, should know what he's getting. It's a Thirsty Dame. I feel like that is decent. Yep. Heatwaveable, though.
Yeah, it's a nice proactive option, but it is going to go really tall for Wangid. And Wangid does have a Heatwave, does a Hjalmar. Hjalmar is going to be dealing just 8 damage. No Great Sword in the graveyard for Wangid. It's going to be using Gird, and the Heatwave comes in. And that means something else isn't getting Heatwaved in this matchup. And any ideas what that card might be that's not going to be getting Heatwaved, Jag?
Could it in fact be a Masquerade Ball? That's my final answer.
Yep, final answer is correct. Absolutely, yeah.
I want to go on whatever game show you're hosting because I feel like I could win the top prize at this point. I'm like, yes. I mean, this is such a hard match to commentate because I don't want to be like, it's all over. But at the same time, I'm just looking at these hands and I'm like, it's all over. You know what I mean? It's just sad. It's just sad. And why is Big Kuku roping here?
Well, he doesn't really want to be poisoning the Joachim. He might find some better poison targets later. And Going for the Brathans on an emissary, Brathans informant can be so fantastic in this matchup on a Bear Witcher, plays for an awful lot of points. These spies are also quite valuable in disrupting things like Totem and Kadooch as well. And it is also worth mentioning with this Nausicaa Sergeant that Big Kuku gave to Wangid, he could have in fact given him an emissary to make that portal a little bit worse, but decided instead to give him that Nausicaa. And Wangid has the option off Avalak Sage to either take that portal with a Fish Flapper and a Sergeant, which does get some synergy with cards like Hjalmar, cards like Junod the Bear Witcher as well, or could take the Kadooch, but cannot pick both, and also doesn't have Quen.
Yeah, he arguably didn't know he was getting a Fish Flapper, so was maybe hoping to give the Nausicaa Sergeant to try and or to try and disrupt the Fish Flapper that way, by putting another 4 provision card in the list, but hey ho, off we go. I feel like the roping is just, at this point, it's like, I mean, yes, think about your plays, decide if you want to play Brathans, if you want to play Masquerade Ball, but it's BM. This is a BM rope. This is like full-on Shin Miri levels of roping, but I guess Shin Miri's not BM, but in a BM way.
Yeah, it certainly does seem for Big Kuku he's in a fantastic position, but you cannot blame him for taking his time in this one. You do not get to Gwent Opens very often. Let's not forget as well, to qualify for Gwent Opens, you have to go through a very long qualifier process. Sometimes you might get there on the first qualifier, but you can play up to 4 qualifiers to qualify for these, and that is whole weekends that can take up. Big Kuku working very hard to have got to this stage, and you certainly can see why he's just wanting to make sure he makes no mistakes when he should just be in a winning position.
And just kind of waiting for poison targets. That's what's happening at the moment with Big Kuku. He doesn't want to play his Masquerade Ball until he's got a nice target. He's maybe hoping Wangid early on will spend all these bombs, and in doing that, provide maybe some way to get the Aristocrat to stick, potentially, although Hjalmar also an option there. But just waiting a little bit, playing it slow, being like, hey, can you give me a poison target, please? That would be great. Hasn't happened yet. At this point, he can afford to play the Masquerade Ball. It still stalls a turn before poisoning can occur. And now Wangid maybe starting to get to the point where he does need to start committing targets.
Yeah, has the Great Sword in hand, Wangid, which you can combine with the Reckless Flurry leader charges to get it up to that 10 strength. And also then the Omega Scope on the Great Sword. It's going to be a nice 10 for 4 provisions. However, on the side of Big Kuku, hand looking pretty gold heavy, and there is finally the Masquerade Ball, which is going to put that 30 name onto the board. One of the best voice lines in the game, by the way, Jagras. A superb specimen, truly. It's one of my favorite voice lines for some reason.
Oh, that's weird. It's funny how Francesca is one of my favorite characters in Gwent as well. It's weird how these things happen, isn't it? So leader charge used on the Madoc. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's a very interesting decision from Big Kuku to leader charge to Madoc. I'm not sure. Oh, I know the thinking. The thinking is he wants to give a status to make his 30 dame come in at 5 points, which is going to be out of the range of a 4 damage bomb. However, there aren't actually any 4 damage bombs left in the deck for Wangid. There's none in his deck, none in his hand. So
that's not I feel like he was going for the Junod there, right? Maybe trying to get it damaged so he could play the Junod, kill it, and then the last 3 charges all went on it. Unlucky in the first roll, too lucky in the second. But on the flip side, can now Hjalmar down? That works.
Yeah, using his Hjalmar combination with leader charges to clean up. And in fact, Wangid deciding that, he uses the Gird there. I thought he used something else, but it was the Gird, putting that Brathans down to 2 strength, and then that leader charge perfectly cleaning up. Of course, no great swords were available for Wangid in the graveyard, so just 8 removal on the Hjalmar. But it is a 10-point game in favor of Wangid as it stands. However, Big Kuku does, of course, have the Masquerade Ball ready and waiting to go. Also, does have the advantage of having a leader charge remaining, whereas Wangid has now committed all 3 of his leader charges.
Yeah, and I guess he had to commit all 3 there to clean both of those units up. I think he must have sat there, done the maths, worked out how these need to roll, and even if they need to roll to clear up both units perfectly, ended up cleaning up both units perfectly and forcing Big Kuku into a position where he is taking an unfavorable poison.
Yeah, definitely not what you want to be seeing. However, does allow him to develop another engine. The Cupbearer has got that assimilate tag, which is going to be gaining a point for every time a unit is played that's not in your starting deck. That's going to include both chapters from the Masquerade Ball. It's also going to include the Usurper, who has transformed from his starting position. So Cupbearer, kind of like a key example of one of the best faction purifiers. Kurt is up there as well now, but Cupbearer still just putting in work for Nilfgaard. I really do love this card.
And Wangid, once again, I guess trying not to put targets on the board with these fanatics, trying to avoid giving you targets. You don't really want to put damage into a fanatic, right? Because they're going to transform. There is a leader charge available, so you can lock one to try and disable it that way. You could maybe follow that up with a Vincent to kill it, remove it, because it's got a status. But you don't want to poison the Joachim, right? Because Joachim you would quite like to coup. So it's just a little bit awkward, the way that Wangid is playing this. And I gotta say, you know, I definitely discounted Skellige going into this at the start of the round, but Wangid is really trying to find ways to disrupt the pure power of Big Kuku in a long round for Nilfgaard.
Yeah, and there does come the Usurper. Big Kuku hesitating for a second, but then does decide to pull those operatives back to his side of the board. The second chapter and the final chapter of the Masquerade Ball is still remaining. That is going to be getting another Fangs, which means 2 poisons in total in his hand. Vincent could be used on a Fanatic once the totem is clicked, because they're going to be doomed, but Wangid might try and play around that as well.
So Big Kuku, he did opt to follow up the poison there also onto the Joachim. It means that you can't coup de grace it, but you know, you keep your leader charge. You've got the 3 points there in the lock. You can always follow that up with 3 points from a coup de grace, maybe onto a Janod or something. There's other ways to find those points. So Big Kuku, he's kind of saying, maybe I wanted to Joachim that. Coup de grace that, play a second Joachim. It's always nice. Find something in your deck. I'm not sure, does he have targets in his deck?
Left in the deck, there's an Invo, there's a Fish Flapper, there's a Fangs, a Hunter, and an Informant for Big Kuku.
Yeah, so there would have been a couple Joachim targets, but just maybe deciding I can still find value in this coup de grace in other ways, take the follow-up poison, and still wait for the big target. And finally, Avalak, Portal, Fish Flapper. There he is. It's here. 27 points to 24. It's close at the moment.
Yeah, and for Wangid at that moment, probably would have preferred to have seen a Nausicaa, because the Nausicaa, you'd be able to make a little bit more use of that deploy ability. And Big Kuku doesn't want to use his final leader charge, because ideally he's going to go for that Payable special on the Junod. Junod off coup can be devastating onto a Bear Witcher in this one. Also, it can hit great swords at times as well. Wangid does have this great sword left in hand and was forced to commit all his leader charges. That's something we didn't touch on. When Wangid used all those leader charges as things went a little bit wrong, the Greatsword is now just going to be a 4-point card, it does appear. Although the Bear Witcher can make that a huge 5-point Greatsword.
Yeah, it's horrific for Wangid. You know, because you're going to deal 3 damage from that Bear Witcher, but there's no big bodies, right? You want those high power units that you can damage and get decent value out of the Janod. It's just not going to happen. Big Kuku also has the flexibility with the leader charge with Vincent, right? So you can always apply the lock to something, giving you a Vincent target. You've still got 2 poisons. You've got, you've got one on the board on the Fish Flapper, and you've got the follow-up in the Masquerade Ball. So when you play Vincent, you don't really want to be using Vincent to kill the Fish Flapper, because you're going to poison the Fish Flapper. So sometimes having that backup lock can be useful. With that said, though, Vincent always is lovely played into these Bear Fanatics, these Abominations, because of that Doom tag, having that status. You do have a good target regardless of how you use your lock, whether you use it for coup de grace or whether you use it for Vincent.
Yeah, the Roderick as well for Big Kuku, far from ideal. It's of course going to be minus 2 points onto the side for Wangid, and it's going to be playing an Invo. An Invo certainly not looking too hot in this one. That is one upside of having such a small greatsword, that it's just giving Invo less value. And Big Kuku gives up on the leader charge into Junod with his coup, and instead just takes the Hjalmar, which cleans up the greatsword and is going to deny that Omega Scope a couple of points.
Absolutely. And I mean, let's think about it. You've got Vincent onto a Fanatic. I always say don't do the maths as a caster, but we'll call that we'll call it 9. There's maybe some like assimilate pings at some point or something that I'll miss, but we'll call that about 9. Plus the follow-up poison is another 11, so that's a 20-odd point play in Vincent. So I feel like even if the Roderick isn't amazing, the invocation not amazing, that's 20 points. And then we have, what was it? Janod onto an extra 1 point on the Janod if you target something with the Bear Witcher. It's not hot. And Wangid, he missed not Avalak, he missed Quen, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, Gwen was missed, and yeah, as you say, like again, being forced to use those leader charges means this Junod is looking very, very awkward indeed. And here comes the Bear Witcher. Now, if there are any operatives remaining, this Usurper is going to grow to 6 strength, and therefore Junod will not be able to hit it. And Wangid has to go for his Megascope next. The good news for him is we do know that there are no operatives available. There is a single one in deck, which is the Informant, but Wangid makes the read that that is not going to be an option. So this Junod should go through. However, surprise, because I forgot the Fangs of the Empire is in fact an agent, buffing the Usurper to 6. Junod is not looking good at all, tying up the series 1-1, and it is another surprise from Wangid, a man full of surprises, and here comes the Reckless Flurry on blue coin again.
Yep, that's what he's going with. And I guess you're thinking my opponent expects NR. They're not going to play NR. They're going to play monsters, right? Because I said that he's not going to play, like, Big Kuku's not going to play NR in this matchup because he thinks maybe he's going to go NR into NR, which is disastrous. So then maybe Wangid likes his Skellige into monsters on red. I guess so.
Yeah. Yeah, it's certainly interesting, and here we are, finally seeing the Monsters deck, and Neuromancy in hand means that She Who Knows is available for Big Kuku. He's going to be looking to hold on to She Who Knows for as long as possible, force Wangid to pass prematurely, and then just have enough reach with his She Who Knows to secure the round while developing that carryover. And Wangid starting off, it does look like, with a Maxi. Having a look at the order of the deck, there's Portal quite near the bottom, but most of the golds relatively near the top. Heatwave and Totem quite far down, but with Avalak near the top, might want to keep this. It's kind of a hard one to say. I think with how close to the top that Avalak is, might just end up keeping this.
Yeah, it's a hard situation for Wangid though, because round 1 is so important in this matchup, and SK, it tends to be more consistent than the monsters list. You know, you have things like the Avalak to find the portal to thin the fish flappers, whereas monsters, you've got your Neuromancy, but beyond that, you're kind of hoping to draw well. How do you feel about Big Kuku's round 1 hand here, though?
There's no Thrive cards. Lavas, of course, the leader charge can deal with those quite cleanly as well, but you don't want to be using leader charges in round 1. And of course, with Lavas now starting at 2 points each, that means 4 points on the board. It would take multiple leader charges. I think he certainly would have liked to have that Lava or a Bruxa, some sort of Thrive cards to play off. The good news for him is he has the Archspore and a Consume with the Brewis. This Brewis is a perfect card for round 1 because it's going to add carryover to the rest of those Crones. You don't really want to be playing the other Crones first. Brewis is the one that you would prefer and does have access to the She Who Knows with a Nero. It could be better, Jag, but I think it also could be a lot worse.
And Wangid doesn't want to, you don't want to bomb the Archespore because it's got Death Wish. So it's not something you actually want to kill because you're just going to pull another one out. Like, yes, you get your Madoc, which is nice, but you're just kind of playing that strategy for them. And it meant that if Big Kuku didn't have the Brewis, you're just cycling the Archespore for them, which they like to see. Madoc also going onto the back row, so no targets at the moment for Madoc. But I feel like you have to do this if you're Wangid because you need Madoc on the board in order to play the Quartermaster. You want to play the Quartermaster, damage the Madoc because you're going to cycle the Madoc anyway, so it doesn't matter if it dies. And it means that you're spawning those Witcher students basically for free.
Yeah, Wangid definitely would like Madoc to have spawned in the front row there because it's, again, then you're getting that value off the Quartermaster with the Madoc Cataclysm. The fact it's spawned in the back row also just means 3 extra points for Big Kuku on his Sabbath development, which is going to be very important if he wants to get the She Who Knows carryover. And Big Kuku had the Consume, doesn't have any other Death Wish cards in his deck, so Wangid just saying, yeah, I'm just going to kill your Archspore. If you're going to bother playing it, I'm going to respect you enough to assume that you do have a Consume, which of course he did. And here comes the first lock for Big Kuku.
But this does show that both players' hands just a bit awkward, right? These are not really the hands that I think either player wants going into this round one. And this round one is so important for both players, you know, trying to gain control. Because if Wangid passes going on blue coin, Big Kuku, if he can develop Sabbath onto a row, can just play the She Who Knows from the Neuromancy for that 10 points of carryover, and then potentially threaten a 2-0.
Yeah, I mean, Wangid, it's a slow start. He's only got a 4-point stratagem as well. This bomb play, okay, while it just denied points later on, for the moment it was very low tempo indeed. And yeah, just a 4-point stratagem. Okay, it's going to thin the deck, but he is not far ahead as it stands. In comes Gerd, an attempt to apply some pressure. 11 points to the good. I don't believe Big Kuku has a single play in his deck that could make up those points in one turn. So the threat of losing on even is now no longer with Wangid's commitment of the Gerd here.
And Wangid, I do feel like he still has cards he can play into this round if he wants. You know, he's got the Quartermaster and he's got the Megascope. So he can use that to put Magic into the graveyard. You know, you can't click Magic to put it into the graveyard to provide value to your bombs, but the Quartermaster's damaging your own units. If you copy one of those, you can cycle the Magic that way. So there is still options here. And like you said, Kuku really unable to develop the Sabbath to do the carryover play, to make the She Who Knows play. And also doesn't have relic pockets, you know, for those Dungans. Doesn't have the pockets for them to gain potential. Can play the Brewers, but it's kind of underwhelming, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Brewers makes sense because it does mean that he has enough reach with the She Who Knows, who will still carry over into round 2, as she is the highest base power card on the board. And Wangid, like, I think his lose con, the biggest way he could have lost this game on the spot was losing round 1 uneven. He's avoided that if he chooses to pass now, but he does put all the cards in the hand of Big Kuku. Big Kuku will be the man making the decisions about how the rest of the game goes if Wangid decides to take this pass.
And Brewis does put, you know, decent value onto that row. 16 points in the row, kind of getting closer to that Sabbath, because now if you play the 10 point She Who Knows, that's the row to 25, you have the Sabbath. So this is a kind of, I guess, do or die moments or decision making for Wangid. He does have Janod, you know, Aguara not an awful target, but there's some nice big targets, right? There's some nice big targets in that monsters list, so not where you want to go. And instead opting for the Matic, you know, damaging the, not the Matic, sorry, the Quartermaster, damaging the Matic, which I spoke about earlier. And just, he just values the round at this point. You're like, yes, he had an out, but I think he values round 1 more than getting out of the round.
Yeah, just a 6 tempo play with the Quartermaster here. As you mentioned, a Megascope can come on the Quartermaster, and then you could cycle the Matic that way, but it's really slow because it takes a couple of turns for the Megascope to spawn the Quartermaster, and then you would also have to click it the next turn. So very slow line of play if Wangid does choose to take that. The good news for him is that he's still more than 10 points ahead, which means a She Who Knows from BigKukuRUzina isn't going to be enough to get ahead at this point, and Wangid would still have the option to pass. Of course, Wangid has the threat of Heatwave as well, so Big Kuku's not going to want to play that, and in does come the first Gankian. Just a 7 for 5 in this situation. Not too bad, but certainly could be better. But that has now developed a relic pocket for the second Gankian, coming in at 9 points.
Yeah, not all Gankians made equal. I don't know why I call it a Dungan. I'm just Dunbanner, Gankian. If they had a baby, it's called a Dungan. But the thing is, now Big Kuku has a space also to play the piggies, to play the witch apprentices, right, and get them going as engines. Wangid, it's so tough, this hand, because I just don't think you can give up the round 1, but you don't have your portal, so you don't have that amazing tempo that helps you contest the round. He also doesn't have Heatwave, so if Big Kuku decided to play the She Who Knows off of without the pass, Wangid, he'd have to get lucky with his flurries, with his Journal. There's ways he can do it, but it's not as neat as he maybe would like.
Yeah, and Wangid decides it is finally time to pass. Big Kuku was slowly approaching that magical 25-point mark, which is going to activate his Sabbath. Has an option of just taking it with a bronze, or more likely is going to be playing a Neuromancy into She Who Knows. This is a play that is going to carry over into round 2. Sabbath is activated. The row has got more than 25 points, and she is the highest base strength card. Now, if Big Kuku can play into this round and activate Sabbath again, he could potentially even carry She Who Knows through into the third and final round.
Wangid, he really needs to draw his answers. You know, he doesn't have his bomb to deal with the cave troll. He's got Hjalmar, but he doesn't have Heatwave. He's got Janod, so he's got some of the ways of moderating this list and dealing with, you know, some of the issues, the Koshis, for example. But actually, currently doesn't have to deal with the Koshi because there is no Koshi for BigKukuRUzina.
And while he can play it from a Neuromancy, that is not going to cut it. You need to Karantha the Koshi for this deck to have the points that you're looking for. So I am incredibly surprised to not see Big Kuku taking his final mulligan. He hasn't played Maxi yet, so he doesn't know the order of his deck. Just decides he doesn't want that last mulligan, and I'm quite surprised. But it will be really interesting to see how he maneuvers his way through this matchup and this round. Cave Troll. This is the time for Cave Troll to shine. It could have been a Caretaker. It's better against Nilfgaard, but this Cave Troll is great in this matchup. There's not that many ways of dealing with tall units. Junod, Hjalmar, you want to save those cards for the Koshi. You don't want to have to sink those into a defender.
Absolutely. So Cave Troll is looking very threatening without that Purify for Wangid. Like, there are ways he can deal with it, but he's also just got to overcome this 10-point carryover, the She Who Knows present on the board. And that's also adding towards that Sabbath. So if BigKukuRUzina did want to push into this round, 10 points in one row, you're already getting close. It makes playing those Witch Apprentices just that little bit easier. And it's a relic, which helps you with those relic pockets. And that's exactly what Big Kuku does. This is like a bomb check.
Yeah. This is the perfect time for that Moondust. We talked about it so much over the weekend. These 5 provision slots, the Quartermaster, the Moondust, the Northern Wind. Wangid has put a Moondust in his desk for moments like this, but he didn't draw it. However, the Reckless Flurry, when combined with Junod, gives you a fantastic way of dealing with defenders. The only problem is this Junod, usually in this matchup, is reserved for the Koshi from Karantha. So while this looks great, it's not ideal. Hjalmar, the highest target is a Gerd, so that will be 8 points, and that wouldn't quite do it. Junod on the defender happens.
But not putting Wangid ahead, still down at 9. And Big Kuku, he did the Cave Troll thing. He did the kind of check. Do you have the Purify? No, he's had to commit Junod. So now he decides, what does he make of that? You know, I'm at 7 cards. So if I keep going here, potentially could lose a card. On the flip side, Koshi in a short round, right? You got to rate it. And I feel like Big Kuku's hand's not bad for this kind of bleed attempt.
Yeah, She Who Knows does need to get to that 25 mark as well for her to be carried over. And it has to stay that at the end of the round as well. So Wangid, with a hand and a deck full of damage cards, is going to be doing his utmost to not allow She Who Knows to stay into the third and final round. For Wangid, he's still going to be very worried indeed about the threat of a Karantha into Koshi push. We, of course, have the luxury of knowing that's not an option for Big Kuku. And the other thing is he's not played Maxi Big Kuku, so he doesn't know if the Koshi is ever going to be drawn. He cannot shuffle his deck to try and manipulate that. Will we even see an Neuromancy onto Maxi to try and guarantee himself having that short round with Koshi in hand? Because without Koshi in hand, I would say it's pretty doomed for him.
Really? I don't know if you ever take that.
It would be controversial. You might just have to hire roll and believe in the heart of the cards.
Because, like, yes, you're looking for the Koshi. You're going to say, do I get Karantha Koshi? But on the flip side, you're losing the ability to target draw Koshi. So you're potentially getting 0 Koshis instead of 1 or 2.
I think you need both.
I don't know. It's a tough decision to make. And finally, we do see Avalak coming down here with the leader charge, fortunately squashing one of those Andregos, stopping the potential there to grow and contribute towards Sabbath. 1 Fish Flapper now on the board, putting Wangid ahead in points and a card up for the time being.
Big Kuku looking to activate that Sabbath. He wants the Crones to come to the party. He wants a 25-point row. No Igni to worry about in this one. There is a Geralt Quen, though, who could still spoil the feast of the Sabbath. The Relic down on the board does mean that the Gankian would come in at 7 points. Also, this Witch Apprentice is another relic engine, but having that card down on the board, if you've not got Sabbath, it's going to be taking an extra bit of damage every time it's damaged. So, bit of an awkward one. Wants to develop this Witch Apprentice, wants to get the Crones, and wants to find that relic pocket, and goes for the Ratcatcheress. I like it. Sabbath isn't quite there, so if Wangid damages this with leader charges, it's going to be devastating.
Ratcatcheress. I like Ratcatcheress. That's a gendered profession. I'm not sure. I mean, it's a monster, so I don't know if it has a profession. But there's a Ratcatcher and there's a Ratcatcheress. Does that mean make me a Gwent casteress? Because if so, I'm putting that in my Twitter bio. You're the Gwent caster. I'm the Gwent casteress. Oh, I like it. I like it. So you're wearing ID. You have Hjalmar on an 8, but you can't really spend that because you have to kind of save it in case of Koshi. It's like an in case of Koshi break glass. In case of Koshi, play Hjalmar. On the other hand, though, Relic's Pocket going towards Sabbath, and Maddock is just not playing ball today.
Maddock is on the side of the Sabbath, and this one not wanting to disrupt the feast. 17 points is the count for Big Kuku. The Gankian is therefore going to put him at the Sabbath rating, and then he's going to be hoping that he can get that Witch Apprentice down as soon as possible. And while, okay, it's great, you can play the Gankian, passing isn't really going to be that safe just yet because he knows that Wangid has 8 damage off of Hjalmar, so he's going to need to get 8 points above the Sabbath at least. Arguably 11 points because of the leader ability as well, if he wants this carryover for round 3. And at the moment, She Who Knows is 10 base power. She will be carried over to round 3 if Sabbath is activated. However, as you can see, as the Gankian enters the board, the Ratcatcheress is increasing its base power. So if another relic is played, the Ratcatcheress will be the priority card carried over to round 3.
And that's just gross, right? 11, 12 points of carryover. It's tough. This matchup is hard. And that's why round 1 was so important, because it lets Big Kuku opt to make these choices and opt to benefit from the carryover. If you're not in control, you can't benefit from the carryover. Unfortunately for Wangid, didn't have the portal in round 1, so couldn't really defend that round. But using it in round 2 here does allow him to kind of keep up in points. You know, another fish flapper going to be flying out of the deck, potentially improving his draws, helping him find that heat wave in round 3. But how do you play out this hand?
Yeah, it's certainly not ideal. You've got the mega scopes, which you could be taking on the fish flappers, but you'd rather use it on a Bear Witcher adept. The adrenaline, you'd rather use it on a Bear Witcher for that extra point. The adrenaline wasn't quite there, so takes the mega scope at first. More fish flappers in the front row. I love the placement from Wangid here. Lots of fish flappers all in a row is exactly what I want to see. The Bear Witcher, as you can see by the glowing red, has now been activated with its adrenaline. And that can start sinking damage down onto She Who Knows. If she is removed, of course, no carryover for Big Kuku. But he can also play this Witch Apprentice. It's going to work as a 4 provision beast Jagras, and it's also going to give that extra point to the Ratcatcheress as well, which is even more carryover if She Who Knows survives.
Can She Who Knows survive though? Wangid, he's got a Bear Witcher in hand and a Kadok, right? So he can get 6 points of damage potentially from those 2 cards, which should clean up the She Who Knows if there's not a good way for Big Kuku to protect it.
There is one option, and that is going to be Weavus. The Crone left in his deck can boost She Who Knows up and try and keep her alive a little bit longer. And if Wangid is forced to Hjalmar the She Who Knows, that's just one less answer for Akoshi. But remember, Big Kuku does not know if Koshi is at the top of his deck or at the bottom of his deck. He has not played Maxi. The information is not something he has access to, and therefore cannot make an informed decision, but just has to try and make a guess and work in odds.
Oh, it's a horrific choice. It's an absolutely horrific choice, because we see Wangid doing exactly that, using the Kadok, using the Bear Witcher to try and remove the carryover, try and remove this She Who Knows. So do you take that risk? Do you say, I can draw the Koshi, I can afford to play an Neuromancy here, you know, guaranteeing the carryover, or do you give up the carryover in order to try and guarantee at least one Koshi in the final round? Oh, it's a horrible decision.
Big Kuku, though, he said it's going to come down to which deck is better? Which fourth faction is better? Is it going to be monsters? Is it going to be SK? For me, at this point in the game, I think you have to believe that your deck is in the order you want it to be. If you take this, well, also you could take the pass, right? You lose a card, but you have that 11 points carryover. So the pass could still be an option for Kuku here.
But you don't have the 11 points of carryover necessarily, because Wangid can afford to play one more card, go down to even cards, and kill the Ratcatcheress. Oh, he's taking it. He's taking the card and the carryover. That's an interesting decision.
Yeah, he could have taken that one extra play and denied 11 points of carryover. So Wangid almost saying that he values one card in his hand more than the 11 points. And
who's that at the top of the deck?
Oh,
who's
my
that at the
goodness.
top of the deck?
He believed in the heart of the cards, Jag. That's all you've got to do.
Did he believe, though? You know, you said he could afford to Nero the crone, right? The boosty crone. I feel like that was like a... You didn't really not believe, but he didn't really believe. It was very ambivalent of BigKuku here.
I have to say, I think he's played it to perfection here. Honestly, this pass, I think, was a much better play than the line I suggested, which was to take the boost crown, because now his Aneromancy is still available. It would have been doomed otherwise, and that means he still has Weavus available for round 3. And it's not just 11 points carrying over here, because every time a relic is played, which includes the crones, which he's just drawn, it includes his leader as well. This Ratcatcheress is going to be growing in strength. However, Sabbath not activated, so every time she's damaged, she's going to be losing 1 base power. So again, that race for Sabbath is going to be an interesting one. How much does BigKuku invest to try and get Sabbath here?
I'm not sure. One thing I do want to point out, though, is both of those Koshis, I think they may be dead. They dead. Right? There's Heatwave, there's Hjalmar. There's no Cave Troll. You tried that out in the previous round. There's not really a lot you can do. And look at this value.
Wow.
Look at this value from the Flurry. You were saying there, every time she gets damaged, she goes down a strength. So that Reckless Flurry with the guaranteed target going from 3 damage into 6. Not damage because the Greatsword didn't boost, but 6 points of power. That is huge. And the heal.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just putting it in the perfect range as well, the Greatsword, so it cannot be removed by a crone, and therefore you get that Mega Scope value. BigKuku does have the option, though, of course, of taking the Heat Wave on the Greatsword, does go for it. And BigKuku, as you can see, the Koshi is active. The adrenaline is ready to go.
And then it's gonna die. I don't know. I feel like that this is such an interesting matchup, because it's about, can you get your Koshi to stick? Can you succeed in your bleed? And I think BigKuku, he kind of wanted to see maybe a Hjalmar. He got the Janod, which is nice, but he maybe wanted to see a Hjalmar or a Heatwave in that second round. Passed the Moondust test, but down a card and Wangid having answers for both of these Koshis. I feel like you're maybe overselling Koshi just a little bit.
Maybe, but let's not forget, Junod isn't available, so you're forced to Heat Wave a Koshi. That's not ideal. You're trading down a lot of points, a whole lava, maybe even 2 lavas if the leader ability comes in. And this was the importance of the Cave Troll in BigKuku's deck. It forced that Junod, it forced a leader charge in round 2, that otherwise Wangid would have been able to hold for this round 3 and deal with the Koshis a lot more easily. This is certainly a matchup favoured for Skellige on paper, but I feel like BigKuku's deck building and his play is giving him the best possible opportunity to win it. And I'm very intrigued to see how this one plays out with the final 4 cards for BigKuku remaining.
Yeah, it's tricky. Those crones are massive. BigKuku drawing a very powerful hand. What does Aneromancy have access to?
Aneromancy, after drawing that crone, can pull a Dorogray, a Lava, or maybe a Witch Apprentice are going to be the most likely options. Dorogray, being that 6 power, could be valuable to trigger a Thrive Curve. And of course, the Witch Apprentice, if Sabbath is achieved, is going to be working as a 2-point per turn engine.
So BigKuku deciding to make hay while the sun shines. Spawning early Endrega's obviously better, because it means the next Koshi that you play will trigger those Endrega's Thrives. So just guaranteeing that value. And those Endregas, they're decent, right? There's still a few cards to play. With that said, Wangid does have card advantage. So although Hjalmar like this isn't exactly, you know, a big spicy play, and you did say it's not ideal, that card advantage, it may come into play here. And I don't know, do you think it's going to be close on the Jagger's scale of close games or not?
Honestly, I have no idea how this one is going to end up. As the second Koshi enters the board, of course, the leader already committed as well. So no lava's coming from this one. The heat wave's going to kill it, but this is a lot worse than a Junod would have been. So if Wang ID had access to the Junod, he would have used Junod on the damaged Koshi that we just saw, and then he would have used Xiaoma on this one. And basically netting 6 points more than this heat wave is overall. So losing out on 6 points, if it comes down to 6 points, Jag, in favor of Big Kuku, this defender just wins him the game. And also the leader charges, he was forced to commit to kill the defender with Junod as well.
There's a problem. This is the problem. Wang ID can't just straight heat wave that Koshi, because otherwise he's unable to click the totem. He needs to get the Bear Witcher on the board for the Megascope, which requires 2 turns, and he needs to play the totem prior to last play. If he heat waves the Koshi, then he can't do that. So potentially an alternative is to save the heat wave and last play and just accept the Koshi. But if you accept the Koshi, I feel like you just lose.
It's a really interesting decision. It's not what I was expecting, and this is the downside of the Megascope. As great a card it is for 4 provisions, you do need to play it quite early on in the round. And with other cards like Totem, sequencing can become an issue. We've seen this quite a few times this weekend with the Reckless Flurry deck, and Big Kuku is going to be very surprised to see his Koshi still alive on the board. Here comes the Aneromancy.
And Big Kuku just drawing absolutely perfectly. Goes for the Witch Apprentice, the magical flying piggy that could. Plays on curve, but doesn't trigger the Koshi Thrive. So gives Wang ID a turn to decide, you know, do I want to heatwave this? But then if you didn't heatwave it the previous turn, you're probably not going to heatwave it this turn. You know, Big Kuku had an opportunity to spawn another Endrega and felt that the Witch Apprentice was more points.
Yeah, and Wang ID may be predicting that Witch Apprentice to be played by Big Kuku, which he would have recognized isn't going to trigger the Koshi Thrive, and therefore has a little bit of time to work with. Now has a decision. Is it time for the Totem, or do I take the Heat Wave? If I take the Heat Wave, of course, I cannot click the Totem. But if I don't Heat Wave the Koshi, then I'm going to be giving up even more points to this lava that's going to be spawned. And here comes the damage crone from BigKukuRUzina. His row is almost full. Here comes the Totem. Here also comes the Bear Witcher from the Megascope. A Heat Wave is remaining, and it is just going to be used as a tool punish, as you say, Jag.
And I don't think it's enough. So he'd opted to let the Koshi go. He's got the Heat Wave onto the...
I've lost all hope of sanity and understanding. There it is, the flurry. And I think this is going to be the key one, because I think if Big Kuku loses this, he is going to be really up against it in a Northern Realms mirror where he's going second. So I think this is going to be the biggest game of this semi-final.
So what you're saying is Wang ID was trying his luck against monsters with Skellige. And if he lost that, the plus side was that at least he can play Northern Realms in favorable coin flips. Yes?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. So I don't know. We'll have to see. I still I think this Northern Realms is the do or die moment, right? Like She Who Knows, that was like the starter, the appetizer. We had that, oh, can he win with the She Who Knows list? But Big Kuku did win with the She Who Knows list. So now the main course, Northern Realms. How do you feel about these hands?
Well, for Big Kuku, he has the Fall Test, he has a Dumbana, and he has a Royal Guard. They're 3 of the key cards you do need in round 1. There's no locks for Wang ID either, so you can use this Crystal Skull on something that's not Fall Test. Of course, Big Kuku, with his leader ability, Pincer, can shoot at any card he wants. Has double Merlin as well. Honestly, I think this is almost a perfect round 1 hand for Big Kuku. You couldn't ask for too much more. Maybe an Amphibious Assault would be nice, but realistically, he's got all the main things he would be hoping for.
How does Wang ID deal with Full Test if it is boosted by the Veil?
Well, he would deal with it with a Heat Wave, but he doesn't have it in his hand. Of course, Big Kuku doesn't know that, though, so it'll be really interesting to see the decisions that are made. Of course, Junod is available, so leader charges plus Junod would certainly be able to deal with the Fall Test if it's not given the Crystal Skull. Maybe Big Kuku's winning line here is the Crystal Skull, the the fall test and just say, I do not believe that you have Heatwave in hand. I'm just going to pray that you don't.
It's a weird one because you like to use the boost on the Dunbanner, right? You boost the Dunbanner, thins Dunbanner's bro. Oh, but I like this thinking. Instead of using the Veil on the Dunbanner, using the Amphibious Assault on the Dunbanner, which boosts it and solves the problem. And then you have the Veil potentially for full test. Like, yes, you play into Heatwave, but maybe you just have to play into Heatwave because it can be Heatwaved either way.
This is so big brain from Big Kuku. He doesn't just want to put the Dunbanner down on the board. This is going to die to a bomb. But an 8 strength Dunbanner can only be killed by one thing, and that's Heatwave. Of course, Wangid can't Heatwave a Dunbanner because then he wouldn't be able to Heatwave full test. And okay, in this situation, Wangid doesn't have the Heatwave at all. But Big Kuku just playing this fantastically, using the leader charge to perfection, gets the assault, and now will he go for the fault test? Will he do the Heatwave skill check? Because if he does, Wangid could have a real tough time dealing with it. This is a big moment in this series.
This is the Veil. See, you go for it. You then deny the Janod. That's 4 points. There's no way with these leader charges you can easily get through that full test. 28 points to 7. Full test duplicating Dunbanners turn after turn after turn. And Wangid doesn't have the answer.
And Jag,
oh, this is...
we've talked about the tempo pass once already today. Are we about to see it in Northern Realms this time from Big Kuku? Foltest is an engine stuck on the board. It's playing for 5 points per turn in this Devotion Northern Realms deck. So if Big Kuku takes this pass, he is essentially forcing Wangid to try and match the Foltest, but also it's going to go to a long round 3 where Kuku has first say. Really big moment. Does Kuku take the pass? Does he just want round control?
It's hard, right? Because Wangid, he's got 2 great swords on the board. So a leader charge, 3 damage, but actually plays for 9. You're stacking a row, you're playing into Gerd, and you know Gerd is the word, you know he exists as a card. So there are tempo plays for Wangid in a very small number of turns.
Absolutely.
That's
this double
question.
greatsword play is just completely trying to shut down this tempo pass line for Big Kuku. And with the Gerd as well, it's just the perfect setup. The Gerd as well is going to be damaging enough cards, in fact, to boost these greatswords to full strength. Big Kuku, big moment, takes the pass. Is Gerd enough points? I'm sure it might be with the leader charges, but let's not forget, Foltest is going to trigger one more time, Jaguarus. Is going to be spawning one more Dunbanner. What an exciting start to this game.
Wangid, I feel like he's getting bullied these last couple of days, especially with the draws, you know, building decks that do have answers to strategies and then not finding them. It's got to be a feels bad moment. So, goes for the Mega Scope, goes for 10-point play, guess you're going down 2 cards, allows the thinning, still has the Gerd on adrenaline, still has the leader charge. You got to do some maths here. I don't want to do maths. It's a dangerous game as a caster to do maths.
Right now, Wangid is getting absolutely maneuvered by the Foltest Pincer deck. This is its strong point. This is why BigKukuRUzina believes in this deck. Here comes the Foltest. Still not quite enough, but Wangid, while taking the round, had to do it down 2 cards. You do not want to try and bleed in Gwent if you're down 2 cards. It is not going to end well in a lot of situations. And this is exactly what a tempo pass, passing on 7, is trying to achieve, forcing that long round where you lose the round, which means you have first say in a long round 3, which is perfect for a siege deck.
So didn't even need the heals, right? Because, sorry, the leader charge because of the damage from the Gerd, the number of Dunbanner healing them right up to full health. And Wangid, he's like, I'm dry passing anyway. Let's play the maxi. Let's get that information now, see what's coming up so I can make an executive decision about how I want to play this out. And we can see down there at the bottom, 2 fish flappers quite low in the deck, but a lot of bronze near the top.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the Quen in hand, at least this time for Wangid, that's going to be a big deal. But he's going to be so unhappy he did not draw the Heatwave, which was, of course, the answer he had to Foltest in round 1. If Wangid drew Heatwave, this whole match would have looked very different indeed. And Big Kuku, going into a long round 3, does also have a chance to develop the patience on Merlin. In fact, 2 Merlins, and with the winch, that could be a real threat of playing Shani, triggering her order a couple of times.
And it doesn't look like Wangid shuffled based on the fact he drew into the Avalak, which was the second card in the list when we looked at Maxi. So opted, I think, to keep the hand. Now, Big Kuku, you know, trying to find some good gold cards. This is a risk. Pincer maneuver. You have the ability to manipulate your hand. Yes, you have the amphibious assault, so it is a more consistent list. But there are still some bronze cards which he didn't really spend in round 1. However, he can afford to go down to 7 cards and just play out some of that bronze in this round. Should he win? Should he want to? It's up to him. You know, how much do you value these bronze cards versus the draws?
I think in a pincer deck, probably I would be very surprised if we don't see him go down to 7 cards here, developing this second Banard as well. Left in his deck, he does still have a Dahlia. He does still have Gerhardt as well. Bloody Baron, another gold card, which isn't exactly going to be doing the most against Skellige. So, yeah, decides he does want to play the second Banard, and then he's got the option of maybe discarding an Oil or playing a Marine here as his final play. So, Merlin going to be in the graveyard. One's going to be at Patience 4. One is going to be at Patience 3, if I'm not mistaken. I hope I've done my maths right. That would be really embarrassing if I got it wrong. I got it right. Let's go.
And how's Hubert doing?
Hubert's in the deck. That is a good point. He is in the deck. Well remembered.
Thanks. What's he at?
And his counter is at 7 right now. There he is.
Oh, we'll throw him away. Oh my god, look at Big Kuku's hand. It's so stacked. And this is where Wangid's at that point where he's trying to get through the bronze, right, to get to the gold cards. And he doesn't have the advantage of having thinned with Portal. And even if he had thinned with Portal, those fish flappers are actually at the bottom where you would want them to be. So the thinning impact of Portal just doesn't work out.
Big Kuku, 1 mulligan left. Adalia, Gerhardt, Bloody Baron, all cards he wants to find. One of those can be tutored with a pincer, but surely he's taking this mulligan. He's just keeping the suspense going. Kuku, that goes. The winch is drawn. The shake of the head from Big Kuku. No Gerhardt, no Adalia. He's going to have to make a decision and only play one of those in this round 3. Not what you want when you're playing a leader such as Pincer, which is a consistency leader.
Yeah, really, I guess, unfortunate for him in that situation. The amphibious assault obviously unable to tutor them. And ultimately, this is the cost of using the leader in round 1, right? Use the leader to get the amphibious assault to play the full test. That played out for him, but doesn't really have the perfect hand. But, I mean, how is Wangid's hand? It's a lot of bombs, which actually isn't... It's not the worst thing, right? Because you can play very uninteractively.
Yeah, having, like, both players actually have quite a lot of these damage cards. Big Kuku has the double boiling oil, but with the fact that Wangid is going second, being a little bit annoying and uninteractive with cards like Portal, cards like the bombs and the Malak can definitely be a nice advantage. And I like this play from Wangid. Getting the fish flappers down, they're going to be gaining armor, which can hopefully soak up some of the damage from the bombardments.
Absolutely. It is just an annoying thing to damage because it heals, because it puts armor on. It's just a little bit irritating. And Big Kuku wants to develop their siege units in order to gain value from the siege, gain value from the bombardment, but you want to do it whilst gaining value from those targets. And this is where Skellige is just a bit of a pain in the ass because they have so many targets you don't want to hit. So here's the choice by the pincer maneuver. Does he go Adalia? Does he go Gerhardt? Goes Adalia over the Gerhardt, which allows him to create an additional bronze card, right? So could create another siege, which I'd imagine he'll do. Although actually he has full test pride and the ballista, so it does have the 2 siege engines required.
Yeah, and just has to make a decision as well over what card he puts back into the deck. And yeah, here comes the Adalia. Adalia, a card. But I mean, she's been around for a very, very long time. And really finding a lot of value in this siege deck with the newly reworked and improved reinforced ballista. A shielded ballista is a lot more difficult to deal with than just a normal ballista, that's for sure. And plays it in the back row as well, using the formation to make it all the more difficult. And it's really relevant, Jag, because the Moondust would have just pierced through and purified the shield here and just cleaned it up straight away. But Wangid does have the Malak spawning in the back row. Goes for the leader charges. Will it find the ballista? It does.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have to take. I think you have to take the leader charge there and just try and get rid of that ballistic, because that engine, points per turn, adding damage to the bombardment, and in playing like this with the bomb with the leader charge, still no target for Wangid. That Maddock on the back row, like yes, the trebuchet will hit it, but Wangid, he's got bombs for days. He's gonna click that anyway and turn it into a row effect. So this is where, you know, I talked about the struggles of the pincer maneuver list against Wangid's lineup. This is part of the reason why, because there's so many targets you just don't want to be damaging, that your siege is really not playing for the potential that you want, and it means that Wangid doesn't necessarily have to commit the heat wave onto that siege. You can just kind of let it play out.
Absolutely, this Skellige deck really just can be so annoying to play against if you have random damage. And the trebuchet, while it looks like it's getting value on Maddock, he's going to be coming back a little bit later on, back at 3 strength, so there's no concern there. And these boiling oils as well, just a little bit awkward for Big Kuku. Doesn't have any particularly good targets. The battering ram is going to be dealing 3 damage to the flapper, putting it in at 6. He can take this boiling oil, but it's not going to be cleaning it up just yet.
So clicks the battering ram, which just goes on to the fish flapper. He's at 6, right? So again, like you said, can't clean it up. And it's going to heal as well. So it's like, even if you do try and kill it there, it's a little bit awkward. Karak Marine to protect the trebuchet. How do you feel about that one?
Yeah, I think Big Kuku looking to develop the soldier pocket for his Foltest Pride, which will give him the reduced cooldown if you have a crew pocket. Instead of having cooldown 4, cooldown 2. And that could be one of the engines he's looking to get in. I think there just wasn't a good option there for Big Kuku, and this is what Wangid's deck is doing. This Reckless Flurry, so many annoying cards to deal with. Maddock, Portal, Fish Flappers. This is why, Jag, Portal, Fish Flappers, I've just been obsessed with them for so long. It's just ridiculous how much value you get from these cards. Not only do they come in at 14 points, but they gain armor and they heal, and that is just quite impressive.
And this is the flexibility of the bombs, right? The Dancing Star, the Fala bomb, as you love to call it. I love that. I wish I'd come up with that, to be honest. Did you actually come up with it, or did someone else come up with it and you stole it?
I think it was Green Knight that came up with it, to be honest with you. But
you did steal it.
Yeah, I think I stole it.
Thank you for being honest. I think, honestly, that was the right decision. Yeah, so the Dancing Star there, it does clean up that crew pocket really nicely with the 3 damage onto the Karak Marine, also denying potential Viraxis targets, although actually I don't believe this is a Viraxis list, is it?
No Viraxis.
And there's still no target, right? Big Kuku's sitting here and he's like, what do I do? What do I do? You know? You don't want to hit Maddock. Fish Flappers, they're going to heal. You play the bombardment, but that's random damage. Where's that even going to go? Well, let's find out. Killed Maddock, I think. Oh, well, yeah, the trebuchet killed Maddock. So you're denying a little bit of value there in that they're not getting the click. But he's coming back.
Yeah, he is coming back, but you're denying the 3 points of the Cataclysm. So that was a nice thing to sink the damage into. And I think also for Big Kuku here, the fact that this Fish Flapper on the left is going to be at 5 points does mean that the boiling oil can clean it up. So that's also pretty nice for him. I honestly think this might have been the perfect way for the bombardment to have gone. So that's definitely an upside for Big BigKukuRUzina. But the Winch still has Shani and Foltest as options, but running out of time if he does want to get the Winch on the Shani.
And Wangid having to commit 2 leader charges, really wanted to hit that ballista, didn't hit it the first time around, hit it twice the second time around, so slightly annoying. 1 point of damage wasted there, but continuing to play this uninteractive bomb strategy, continuing to play the Maddock here, bringing back the Maddock. The Fish Flappers, again, not ideal to target, but at least now Big Kuku, as you say, can boiling oil. We can basically fry the fish. Is what this equates to. Let's get some fried fish. I'm fancying fish and chips. It's a Sunday. Let's do it.
Maddock is just continuing to spawn in the back row as well, which has to be frustrating Big Kuku.
He's a mad lad. That's what he does. And yeah, back row, it's just annoying because these trebuchet pings lose out. But finally now, Wangid has run out of bombs. You know, the police have come along. They've said, no, sorry, bombs not allowed. Please stop. Taking him off to jail. So no more bombs. So if Maddock dies, he is dead. He's not coming back. But 8 points to 6 with a completed siege. Completed.
It's pretty impressive.
That's not a scenario you want.
No.
And both ballistas dead as well, right? So they aren't doing their engine potential. Heatwave still intact for different potential targets. But Wangid, with all the leader charges, it does make Janod kind of awkward.
And again, we've talked a lot already about the difference in these players' Northern Realms decks. Wangid qualifying a week later than BigKuku with maybe a more up-to-date meta deck using the Inspired Zeal with dual cards. Okay, it's less consistent, but look, BigKuku, he has a consistent deck, but he doesn't necessarily have the source that the Inspired Zeal and the dual cards give you, because those cards are going to be applying a lot of pressure, and cards like Boiling Ore, Winch, and Fold Test, while they're great, they're round 1 cards.
Is it Hubert time? Is it Hubert time? I feel like it might be Hubert time. How close am I? It's got to be on like 1 or 2.
He's on 2, yes.
Ah, god damn it.
That was a good effort. I forgot about him completely.
I know you forgot about him. You're just busy having a wee chat. I'm like, don't forget about Hubert, looking at the points. I don't have access, by the way, to Spectator Client. Specimen does. So when I'm like, what is in his deck? Or does he have access to this? That's just to make Spessy go and find things out.
It is my responsibility,
13,
yeah.
13 points to 11, 5 cards to 4. Shani on the board. Winch puts her down to 4. But I mean, there's Hellman, there's Heatwave, right? So Shani can be answered. Full Test can be answered. Kuku, no access to Gerhardt. And I mean, what is this Amphibious Assault pulling?
Amphibious Assault has got an option of a Reinforced Ballista or a Raw Guard or Kudak. That is about it, unless BigKuku wants to Amphibious Assault into his Hubert, but I have a feeling that's not going to be the line on this one. Just a hunch.
No, I'm not convinced it is going to be the line. So leaving Shani on the board, will she trigger? Right, there's 3 turns and you can remove 3 cooldown with Winch, or is it 1 too few?
I think it's enough. Pretty sure it's enough, about.
So opting to use the Hammer then not to kill the Shani. I guess like with the Shani, you can kind of leave it, right? Because it takes so many turns for it to happen, you can kind of afford to be a little bit patient. A little bit patient with it and wait and see how the round plays out, what it is my opponent plays. And this is the Amphibious Assault, and yet another Ballista on the board. This one boosted up to 8 points of damage. Here comes the order. Here comes the Hubert. Right, wrong. Oh, he's 1 off.
1 off.
God damn it.
He's ready and waiting. He's been stalking his prey in his premium art. You might notice he's following a certain Priscilla, and if you've played a quest in Witcher 3 in Novigrad, you will know exactly that he is up to no good stalking Priscilla there. He is going to be entering the board very soon. The next time BigKukuRUzina uses an order ability, either on this siege engine in the front or the siege engine in his hand, Hubert is going to be finally entering the board. Honestly, Jag, it was pretty close to Hubert not even entering the board. Like, it was really close.
This is a weird Hubert, right? Like, down to 3 cards in round 3 and he still hasn't shown up. That just shows how Wangid controls and continues to control these ballistas. BigKuku plays a ballista, Wangid kills a ballista. BigKuku plays a ballista, Wangid kills a ballista. At this point, I feel like BigKuku's going ballistic with how ineffective these ballistas are.
Heatwave invested on the ballista that was used, played by Amphibious Assault. What that means is there's no way to kill the Shani. So the Winch on Shani is now looking like a real possibility for BigKukuRUzina. Doesn't have a crew pocket, so Foltest Pride isn't going to be gaining any more points over time, and there's not really the best targets for it. However, he might also decide he can float the Foltest Pride here and doesn't have to use it just yet. We'll see what he decides to do.
Absolutely, Wangid still has access to some damage. There's a couple Bear Witches still to come out, and Avalak into Totem, I'd imagine? Is there still Totem?
Yeah, there's a Totem
Jesus
and a
Christ.
Kadooch, so it has an option of either Totem or Kadooch.
That's another Bear Witcher. I mean, I guess depends how you feel about Witchers. Totem's powerful, though. This is the thing, 15 points to 12. Wangid a card up. Yes, Shani, we believe, going to be reset. Hubert, when he clicks on the Foltest Pride, should show up. I don't know. Is it going to be close? Is Skellige just too good? He picked Team Bear Witcher, goes for the Kaduk, but choice here doesn't have to go for the Fish Flapper. Other options available do have some potential depending on your strategy. Goes for the Bear Witcher. Unsurprising. I guess deals 3 damage to Shani, maybe tries to whittle that down. And now you have to winch.
Yeah, and this is why we highlighted the winch at the start. A really interesting tech choice, but decides not to go for it. Just leaves the Shani exposed. Shani's going to get cleaned up, and
that was a fork, right? Big Cuckoo, if he doesn't take the oil onto the Bear Witcher gets healed, so can't kill the Bear Witcher. So you're trying to deny, you're playing up for the oil there for 7, but in this situation, I mean, I think the winch would have triggered the Shani, but maybe not. Can we have Hubert, please? Thank you. Hooray! That's not enough. Let's be real.
And Wangid takes victory in this matchup, and that leaves us with a Northern Realms mirror to finish it off. Wangid is going to be on blue coin, which is seen as being a very big advantage in this mirror matchup, and he also has the dual cards. However, Jag, it's not over just yet, because while he's just been chilling in the wings waiting.
In a river
I've been waiting all weekend for that,
For God's sake. I mean, that's made my cast. Regardless of anything that happens, I feel like you flapped a fish on broadcast, You can't live that down. Okay, so here we have it. The drawing siege specimen.
Yeah, it's there. It's in Wangid's hand. He's got siege. That's the big deal.
Mm-hmm. He's got Gerhardt. He's got Firaxis. He's got Shani.
But he doesn't have a duel, and that's going to be really important because Big Kuku has Foltest. Doesn't have Defender. Will Wangid find the duel? He doesn't. Okay. So it's not over for Big Kuku because Foltest is not going to be able to be answered. There's no Margarita in hand either. So this is going to be the battle of Foltest. Can Foltest carry BigKukuRUzina through this round number 1?
The difficulty that Cuckoo has in this situation is he doesn't have the Veil, so he can't easily boost up the Foltest on the turn that he plays it. And, yes, he can Amphibious Assault the Dun Banner again. So he has kind of ways of doing that, sort of. But it is a little bit awkward. And Wangid, he does have the Ballista. He does have an Oil. So he does have ways of doing kind of small amounts of damage. So may opt for that style of strategy to get rid of it. But you're absolutely right. Missing out on Selkirk and on Ansays does give Big Cuckoo an opportunity in this round 1.
However, he does have the Ballista. He plays it early. He knows exactly what he's doing here, Wangid. And a Ballista ping plus a Boiling Oil is going to be dealing 6 damage, enough to clean up Foltest. So Big Cuckoo, he's going to need to protect Foltest with something like a Royal Guard, but he also needs these Royal Guards to thin his Dun Banners in a consistent way. So it's a sticky situation to be in, that's for sure.
Oh, it's super annoying, right? Because you have ways of boosting. You need the Royal Guard to stick so that you can play the Foltest, you can boost him, you can protect him. 4 damage for Wangid, possible. You can't really spend the Boiling Oil, though, right? You have to spend the Boiling Oil on the Foltest. So you have to kind of find this damage some way. You've denied the armor, but the boost is still coming. So now Big Cuckoo has to make a decision. He wants to boost his Dun Banner, but he also wants to boost his Foltest. And I don't think there's a nice way to do both.
He does have a Marine, which you could float on the board, but it's just risky. It's not really the kind of thing you want to be doing, especially with Inspired Zeal being a threat on the Ballista for Wangid. That gives him 3 extra damage in just 1 turn, and the Marine can just be cleaned up no matter what happens. And yeah, this is a huge example of why Blue Coin is often favored in these matchups in Northern Realms mirrors. Wangid getting that board development. He has 2 engines on the board, the Ballista. He has also the stratagem to help him, which Big Cuckoo wishes he had to boost the Foltest. And if Wangid wins this round 1, first say with Siege can just be completely game winning.
Okay, so this is how much Big Cuckoo wants to protect the Foltest. Gone Amphibious Assault round 1 into a Royal Guard. He's like, remove this boost if you can. And I don't think Wangid can do it. So then, does Foltest stick? Does Big Cuckoo win round 1? Oh man, this is like the cliffhanger. If this was like a soap opera, this is where the episode would end.
And the epic music has entered. I know chat's going to absolutely love this, particularly if it is Banana Tiger. I can't unfortunately hear the music, but there's so many big tunes from The Witcher 3 and from Gwent. I'm sure whatever it is, the chat will be enjoying it. And yeah, the second Royal Guard cleaned up. but the one that's remaining is Inspired. That can give some armor to Foltest, which is going to help keep him out of the range of that boiling oil. So that could be really important. But is it enough to get Big Kuku ahead? I think it's just about enough, yeah.
Because remember, so there's a Ballista ping, there's a Barnard damage. What's he on?
Ah, of course, the Merlin as well, threatening even more reach. He's up Patience 2 as it stands.
Okay, so you've got a few points there. You've got the oil. So you've got to kind of work it out. Do some maths. I'm not going to do maths.
There's 9 points of removal potential here for Wangid because he has Merlin dealing 2, he has the Ballista dealing 1, the oil 5, but then also the resupply activated, which is going to be 9 points. Foltest coming in at 10, so he's just about going to hold on for the moment, I do believe. Unless something's gone seriously wrong in my maths, which wouldn't be the first time, Jaguars, that's for sure.
Yeah, but he holds on, but the issue that Kuku has is, like, even if he survives one round, you need to play your done banners so Foltest can start copying them. But you also want to protect your Foltest with your Kerak Marine. So what do? You have to, again, it's a fork, right? You're in a fork in the road. You got to decide, am I going to go Team Triss or am I going to go Team Yennefer? It's that kind of fork. You got to pick. And the obvious choice is Team Yennefer, but I don't know if Big Kuku knows this.
I'm in full agreement on that one, that's for sure.
Well, I guess he's Team Triss, right? Look at his leader. A rookie mistake if ever there was one. As the patient Barnard is ever growing in the damage. You know, Wangid basically saying, I don't care about Foltest at this moment in time. Just doesn't care. He's like, you know what? You do you, boo. I'm going to just wait.
We talked about before the game the lack of defender for Big Kuku in this Foltest strategy. You're investing a lot to get Foltest going through with this leader ability to tutor him in round 1. Okay, you can tutor other cards later on, but really it's the consistency of the Foltest that I think is the biggest selling point for Pinsir. But you don't invest those 9 provisions for a defender. A defender here for Big Kuku could have made all the difference because suddenly the Foltest is just not going to be able to be answered because Wangid does not have access to the City Guard.
Specimen. Wangid's Hubert. It's got to be low. He's clicked that Ballista quite a few times. I'm feeling it. Like 3? We're gonna go 3?
He's chilling on 4.
Oh god damn, so close, so close.
It's a great effort.
Okay, so Dunbanner's out. Dunbanner's copying. You have 10 strength full test. You have what, 3 on the Barnard?
Yep, Patience 3 on the Barnard student on Merlin there, and here comes the boiling oil.
Yep, it's just enough damage. Just enough damage. Oh, so many clicks. Oh god, wait, 3, and he clicked 2, so it's on what? No, it's on 2. Is it on 2? It's on 2. I'm gonna say 2. Ah. It's
on 1.
God damn. Oh, because around, yeah, I see. God, but Hubert, like, I'm assuming Big Kuku knows he's on 1. Did he count? I think he's counted.
I think you've got to, and Big Kuku's is on 9, so that is a really big deal. Like, Wangid, extra tempo for this round, but that's points lost for the future rounds. But honestly, in the mirror matchup, round 1, round control is going to be all important. So I think for Wangid, this is just another example of where going first in this Northern Realms mirror is going to help because you want the extra points in round 1. If you've got the board presence, you're more likely to click your cards more often. And yeah, just a single Ballista click away from Hubert entering the board and adding an extra 5 points of tempo for Wangid, helping him secure the round. But the hand's getting a little bit awkward, Jag, because there's a Ballista, sure, but there's a Shani, which is bricked. There's a Varaxus, which is round 1, and that is pretty terrible. And there's a Gerhardt and a Siege. So it's getting to the point for Wangid where things are looking to be quite expensive.
Hubert. Right, he's gonna rope his knee. I'm gonna be sitting here chanting Hubert like an absolute flick.
Could have been going on for a while.
Ready. Hubert.
There he is, the man, the myth, the legend.
The price is Reich as Hubert Reich enters the board with the Ballista, and Wangid has to be a little bit careful about siege engines, right? You need them. You've got Shani, you can resurrect one, so you've got kind of access, but it doesn't have the perfect number of siege engines for siege. It kind of denies the opportunity to bleed with it. But actually, is he even going to win this round? At the moment, he's losing on even. He's going to have to commit something.
That's a really good point, Jack. He's actually only got 2 siege engines left in his deck. That is going to be a ballista and a reinforced ballista. So pretty unusual there to see Northern Realms struggling for siege engines. But this is definitely going to be something that Wangid needs to be careful of. He can't shoot to these, so he's going to need to draw one and then assault into the other one. And here comes Gerhardt. Teleportation, an option on the left, but it's almost always going to be the Pact. That's 6 points. Gerhardt doing a deal with the devil. Gone throw dim. He is everywhere, even in a Northern Realms mirror, in a devotion Northern Realms mirror, nonetheless.
Yeah, and just Wangid had to go Gerhardt. You can't play Shani. You got 2 siege engines, right? So you play Shani, which gives you access to a... Oh no, she doesn't. She resurrects people. I'm talking nonsense. Medics don't work on siege engines. So you can't play Shani because you've got nothing in the graveyard. Can't play Varaxis round 1. He's devotion. Like it's chapter 1. You just don't do it. You don't want to play siege in this round. Gerhardt, the last card available.
Yeah, if Big Kuku can force enough points here for Wangid to play another card, things are going to be getting very sticky. But Wangid sees the Banard student hit the deck and has the possibility to pass. Now look, it's not ideal. It's far from ideal passing and giving up round control, but at least you have those dual cards available. But Big Kuku winning the round in the Northern Realms mirror from red coin. You don't see that very often.
Yeah, winning the round, but going down a card to do it. And we saw this happen yesterday, where the pincer maneuver player went down a card and then went for the 2-0, succeeded in the 2-0, but succeeded on a tie. And that was with the Inspired Zeal player missing a few cards, right? Yep. So I'm not convinced that Kuku, although he's won this round, is going to be necessarily able to go for the 2-0 here. It depends a little bit on siege engines. Amphibious Assault guaranteeing access to 1, but Wangid really wants to find another one here. It's
a big mulligan, Jaggerus. This series could come down to this mulligan for Wangid. Can he find the perfect hand or the near perfect hand and find that bronze siege engine? He doesn't. So siege is only going to be triggering 2 chapters. BigKukuRUzina has round control, and it might just all come down to this round number 2 as siege enters the board for BigKukuRUzina.
Yep, siege on the board, and you answer a siege, I guess, with a siege. Although the problem with the second siege is you're always on the back foot, right? They're playing their ballistas, they're triggering chapters, they're spawning units, and they're damaging your siege engines. So your siege engines are always going to be reactive, whereas theirs are very proactive, which is why this round control is so important. Kuku does have 2 leader charges remaining, so can access what in the deck?
Gerhardt, Adalia, Shani. He has a Hubert Rex still in his deck as well. Wangid, no access to his big dual cards that this deck is so well known for. We've maybe questioned Big Kuku's deck choice. Foltest delivered in round 1, and the consistency is shining through. This is an example of where this deck is just better than Inspired Zeal, because you can just shoot at every gold card you possibly want.
Yeah, and this is the difficulty for Wangid. On paper, dual cards in this matchup absolutely devastating if you draw them. And we did say for Wangid this matchup, if he draws unfavorably, it gives Big Kuku an opportunity. And this round here, this is his opportunity. This is the do or die moment, because I feel like if you're Big Kuku and you lose this round, you're just losing the game.
Absolutely. Big Kuku just going for it here. He's used his Adalia on a ballista, but don't forget 1 leader charge remaining, so he can get rid of another ballista. He's also got Assault, so it could have been a little bit better for him if he was able to maybe just play a gold card and then Assault into this ballista. He's going to be playing 1 ballista from hand still, so it's not completely perfect. But here, Wangid bluffing almost, like Kuku's going to think that he's got that second chapter or the final chapter of the siege ready to come, but it's not going to be the case.
Was that the target that he... I guess, well, he was worried, right? He was worried that the click was going to hit the shield. So he shot the shield there to ensure that when he clicked the battering ram, that if it hit the ballista, you didn't lose out on value. But in doing that, he went for the safe play, because if he clicked the battering ram first and it hit the battering ram, he could have then cleaned it up here with the ballista. Although he can still do that now, I suppose.
This could be a big bombardment from BigKuku. When he plays a siege engine, the bombardment is going to be dealing a lot of damage. There's a trebuchet in the back for both players as well. So BigKuku, ideally not going to sink too much into this trebuchet in the back. Would like to just damage it once. Let's find out where the pings go.
Yeah, let's see, because this is huge. And one battering ram living to ram another day. I feel like if you're Wangid, you must be fairly happy with that. I'm not sure, you'd have to have done the math to see if he could have killed them both. But either way, one battering ram is one more siege engine, which means when you play this bombardment, you're getting one more point. 16 points to 2. 3 cards to 2. Jesus, that's a lot of siege engines.
We talk about the man that sieges first will often be victorious. BigKuku got the siege down first. The bombardment almost completely wiping the board of Wangid. And this bombardment for Wangid, first of all, he doesn't even have it because there's no siege engines available, but it would be just dispersed across the board and unlikely to actually remove any siege engines. Wangid is between a rock and a hard place here. Doesn't have the siege engine and is down 16 points.
And this is the power of controlling the ballistas. In the Skellige matchup, we saw Wangid deny the ballista value from BigKukuRUzina. In this matchup, it's not happening, right? And this is the final leader charge, I believe, as we see probably the ballista, I'd imagine, traded out for a Gerhardt. I don't see you trading Amphibious Assault here, because you can just use it to draw ballista and boost it up, worst case scenario. Here comes Gerhardt. 4. He's at patience 4. I was gonna say, do you greed it? No, he takes it.
Yeah.
Not with a dueling opponent. You can't greed it.
Exactly. We can see that actually Iluxa would have had the ability there to greed his Gerhardt, but still that 6-point pact. Yet again, another deal with the devil coming in here. Gonzro Dim really is all over the place in this match. And Wangid, 3 cards left. He's down 31 points. BigKukuRUzina, not only does he have Amphibious Assault as his last card, it's a Warfare. And that's going to trigger the resupply on these ballistas in the front row, gaining even more points. And the target for this is going to most likely be a Karak Marine, really making use of the devotion. Here comes Shani.
And also, I believe the battering ram will move out of the pocket, right? The soldier pocket, which gives, I mean, Full Test Pride likes a soldier pocket. Maybe a bit late for a soldier pocket for Full Test Pride, but just one of those things that's worth noting. And finally, Shani comes down, gets the Banard. 11 points to 28. 1 leader charge remaining. 2 cards versus this Amphibious Assault. But so many ballista.
17-point game. This
What
could
about
be...
Hubert? Have we seen Hubert?
Hubert gone from both players. Wangid had that extra point, those extra points in the first round. BigKuku,
Oh, he's at the back
those
row.
Hubert points are helping him out. Here comes Amphibious Assault. Remember, the resupply is going to be enabled as well on this ballista that is remaining. Is this the last play BigKuku makes in the semi-final? Will this be enough to put himself through into the final against all odds in this Northern Realms mirror matchup?
I think it might. That's a huge hill to climb. You've got the Carrot Marine around 42-9. You need 30 odd points here, right? More than that. So there's the Carrot Marine. There's the boost. The Varaxis, the leader charge, resetting the order ability, onto the Shani, onto the Carrot Marine. I don't think it's quite enough, unfortunately. 40 points to 32. BigKuku.
Holy guacamole, what an ender. So much emotion, going 2-0 in the final in the NR Mirror. Man, dude, how you feel? How you feel? That was incredible. That was incredible. We could see the tension on your face.
Это было просто невероятно. Столько эмоций мы увидели. Вот эта зеркалка на севере, это было просто нечто. Вот скажи, как себя чувствуешь сейчас?
Я чувствую облегчение, потому что я был уверен, что я уже вылетаю с того, как проиграл Гелик. Потому что Миррор Севера на красном они почти не выигрываются. Но мне получилось.
Well, I feel really well actually. I thought I'm gonna lose because the red coin mirror Northern Realms is actually really hard to win, but thankfully everything went well, and I'm happy about it.
Yeah, you pushed it in the end, and we could see the emotion on your face. You were kind of, counting the points and seeing if Wangid will be able to catch up to you, but he did not. You'll be going against Akella. Akella also wanted to go against you in the final. Who do you think will be the winner?
Ну, мы видели, что в последние моменты ты там просто считал уже баллы, получается, думал, сможет ли Вангид догонять или не сможет. Но все получилось. Вот, получается, сейчас ты сыграешь против Акеллы, он так и хотел, чтобы ты с ним сыграл. Как думаешь, у кого больше шансов в этом финале?
Ну, шансы равны, очевидно. Это же Gwent, всякое может произойти. Но я надеюсь, удача будет на моей стороне.
Well, actually, chances are equal. This is Gwent. Anything can happen, but hopefully the chances are on my side and I'm gonna win.
Nice, nice. Hezir, thank you for translating. I actually got that one. Our language is pretty much similar, so yeah. Congrats once again. Quick question, where's the dog?
Она не захотела сегодня выйти.
It didn't want to come out today.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Just send our warmest regards to the dog. Congratulations, get some rest, and we'll see you in the final.
Передай привет собаке, поздравляем еще раз, отдохни немножко, увидимся в финале.